Good morning and welcome to Morning Moments. Thank you for joining me today, whatever platform you're on and watching this. I have a award-winning filmmaker today, and it is my pleasure to bring Chason Laing to Morning Moments. Welcome, Chason.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, but while answering the question, what do you do and why do you do it?
Sure. Well, so I mean, as you said, I'm a filmmaker, which just means that sometimes we make films, and so at any given time, I can be made or found making something. Sometimes they're just short things, or helping the companies out making films for social media or different things like that. And then my passion, of course, is when I do narrative storytelling. And so I spend a lot of my time kind of either working on films, getting films done, that kind of thing. Uh, I think if you said, as the defining thing, filmmaking is maybe the thing that I'm working on the most. I don't know if it necessarily is the thing that defines me the most, because if you get into the question, why do I do what I do? Growing up, I had a passion for just stories in general. I liked reading a lot. I liked reading, any kind of good book that had something that would just, sucks you in. And then when I was in seminary, I realized that I didn't really fit the mold for most seminary people. I didn't really want to work in a church. And while I've done and worked in many churches, that was not a thing that I super felt like I wanted to do. But I definitely felt drawn to the power of how a story can reach people in a way that maybe a pastor, a sermon can't do. And so just the more and more I kind of dived into that realm and said, how can I tell stories that deliver truthful messages? That really kind of ignited a passion for me that ultimately resulted in filmmaking and all the different aspects from there. And so now, I just try to incorporate story in wherever I can do it. And so that's kind of over time that's evolved from doing sermon videos for pastors to, like I mentioned, doing commercials or doing different things where sometimes it's not really glamorous at all. And then that's kind of molded over time. We did a children's series where it was, I never really thought I'd do that. You had mentioned you worked with puppets when you were younger. I did a whole series involved with puppets, and I wanted to do something like Jim Henson and this whole crazy thing, which I never really thought I would do. And especially as a filmmaker, that's not like that's not like the dream. The dream is like, like, I don't know, Peter Jackson or something. But for me, it was like, how can I tell stories to kids? Like, my passion is not necessarily the film sets and all that. It's how can we tell a story in an interesting way? And so I just kept evolving that train and moving on. And right now, the most current thing I'm doing is I'm finishing up a show that I just did for PureFlix. That's like a 5-episode small series for them, and hopefully it's coming out soon. I'm about to deliver it, and I'm excited to see that done. But it's a more aimed at adult narrative, if you can call it that, less children. But yeah, so that's what I do, and I just love telling, like I said, telling stories that have truth in them. If I can put an idea in somebody's mind that maybe wasn't there before, if I can make them think about something, then I feel like I've accomplished my job. I don't look at filmmaking as my ministry tool. I don't look at it like I'm just going to try to make sure that the Jesus message is just slammed in your face. What I view it is, what can I do to put in your brain that will have you think about something in your life that might unsettle you a little bit? And then I just believe that if you're thinking about those things, God usually has a tendency to bring people or situations around you that then reveal more of his truth. And so it's maybe more of a, I don't know, stealthy filmmaking sometimes, but I just kind of view that as that's the way I view filmmaking, I guess. And I'm really passionate about that. So yeah, hopefully, did that answer your question? Okay?
Yeah, it did. When you were talking about using the film and using the film industry in sermons, I was thinking that for years it used to be just to preach the sermon, and you got one guy standing up there, a talking head, and that's all you had. And that really didn't reach everybody, especially as adult learners. It really didn't hit the visual people at all. And when you do illustrated messages, and now what I see a lot of the churches doing is is having the a little movie or a little film or something in the middle of the sermon. And so those little clips, people remember that, and that adds to the message. It isn't the message, but it adds to the
Right.
message.
Yeah, it's funny. The first time I really did I was working in this church doing their production coordination, and the pastor was about to do the sermon. I got this really interesting idea to make a video that I thought this would be a good illustration for what you're talking about. Let me try it out. And they just kind of said, okay, let's see what this, let's let him go, and what can he hurt, right? And anyway, but that video came out before the sermon, and it was just like a huge success, which was good and bad. Because it was good because so many people liked it, and then there were several more that were in that series, and that series went over super well in the church, and it just was really great. The negative thing was that then they wanted that every week.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, can you reduplicate this over and over and over? So it became a little more of a challenge, but yeah.
Well, even with the changing times with the pandemic and all, churches have been forced to be able to learn how to do streaming, and forced to be able to get into the camera work and get into that. And I think it's opened up a lot of doors to now maybe have more visual even in a church that's not a mega church, that they could still
Absolutely.
do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to a really small church right now, and they're on top of the game as far as, streaming and getting their image up. And yeah, I definitely think churches are just now beginning to see, it's taken them a long time, and it's just a general sense, to see the power of what you can do with video, and how it can reach people, and how you can put it out online in a simple way, and people all over the world will tune in and watch it. And so you
Yeah.
can quickly reach people anywhere instantly. It's probably one of the most powerful mediums out there right now. And I think the more churches get into that, start realizing that not only is it just a tool for reaching, but also, like, you can actually plan and script and challenge people all over the world with the same methods. It doesn't have to be a Hollywood endeavor to make it happen. So,
And it also shows that it's more than just these four walls. I mean,
right,
the pandemic and politics didn't surprise God at all. God
right,
wasn't like, "Whoa, I never saw this coming." Uh, but what the shaking of the church, and the shaking of ministry, saying, "I have to do this now." Now, what we produce and what we send streaming. I was looking at my YouTube channel the other day, and 65% of my viewers are in the United States. That means the rest of them are around the world.
right.
Go figure,
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see what God is doing with even the local church now becoming worldwide.
Yeah. No, I've noticed the same thing with my trend. I have a small YouTube channel, but then when I look at my content that's on platforms, and the stats that I get from that, it's a very similar thing. Like, I find that I have, audiences in little, niche countries all over the place. I'm like, how did they even find this? And yet
Yeah.
it's being watched there. And so you can really start thinking about, like, your content is global now. It's
Yeah.
with a click of the button is global, and you have to think that way. It's we used to have to get somebody to learn a language and travel over there and find a place to live and figure
Yeah.
out a way to reach people. And now you can literally just click a button and it's done. It's pretty amazing.
It brings that great commission back to where, right in our studios, in our offices, in our churches, the great commission
Right.
to go. I tell people 2/3 of God's name is go, so let's go. And it's amazing once you look at the resources available, start pushing the button and recording and streaming. God does great things with our little effort.
Yeah, I think that's the typical God thing, though. I mean, from loaves and fishes, he always takes something small and something that you might not see how it's going to work, and then has the tendency to take it to places that you're not expecting. All you have to do is just be obedient and do the thing. So
Yeah, I've often thought that God doesn't always look at our abilities as much as our availabilities.
yeah.
And he says, if you're available, I'll equip you. He doesn't call the equipped. He does equip who he calls. And so, what a great message is just to be willing to be used by God.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely agree.
Yeah. Chason, thank you for joining me for Morning Moments. It's been a delight getting to know you and finding your heart for the story. And is there any closing thoughts that you have for those that are listening that that maybe are looking for their purpose?
Sure. Something I've been wrestling with lately is, especially when it comes to Christian filmmaking, which is a major thing right now. I kind of feel like it's really easy to get overwhelmed when you see very successful filmmakers out there making stuff with large budgets and everything like that, and then you feel like you have a passion for story and you want to do something, but you just don't have those means, and you might make something, but it's just small. And it's easy to look at that and think, well, maybe I'm not blessed the way other people are blessed, or maybe not God's not wanting to use me the way he's using everybody else. And I think that way of thinking is something that gets in and can deter you from actually doing the things that you're passionate about. And for me, I mean, that's been an ongoing battle in my head for years. And I've really had to wrestle with the idea that that is not, we are all blessed way more than we ever know. And just because, you might not have the resources or you might not have the thing, I think that part of the whole deal is just you glorify God in what you do. And he doesn't care the size of the thing that you're doing. If you're being obedient and you're doing what he's put on your heart to do. And I think that is the whole thing right there. Like the success, you might never know the true success of the thing itself, but it's just being obedient and doing it. And then knowing like I am following through with what he's laid on my heart to do. And I'm doing the most excellent job I can with this. And that is just as honoring as anything else. And so if I could encourage any other people that are out there doing filmmaking, I think that that's a major thing, is just to say, no, get out there, enjoy it, do it. It's fun. It's a unique thing. It's a unique medium. And the enjoyment of making it is the point. It's not, you don't have to have the masses behind you to prove that you've done something good or honorable.
I was praying one time about my broadcast here. I says, "Well, God, what do you want me to do this little broadcast? What's the deal here? I talk to God that way sometimes. Well, what's the deal, God? What's the deal? And how many people do you want me to reach?" And it's like the Holy Spirit says, "You reach one, and I'll take care of how many." And after I had that surrender, then I sit back and God just pressed down, shaking together, running over, starts multiplying. But it needs to take that surrender, saying, "It's not mine anymore. It's yours, God." And when your filmmaking or your song or your service is his, he says, now I could take that, like as you said, the loaves and the fish, and I could do something with it.
Right.
Uh, I want you to follow Chason and see uh, the films he's having. We're going to put down below his contacts and how in the films he's working on and things being released, so you could keep an eye on them and find out what's going on with them. More important than that, as soon as this interview is over, I want you to stop and pray for Chason, that God would continue to bless him. Chason needs your prayers, folks. So
Absolutely.
I want you to pray for him. He needs your prayers, and you need the practice. So pray that God would richly bless him and continue to put the right people in the right place, the right time in front of him to do the work that he's supposed to. Thank you for joining us for Morning Moments.